Gambit is a team that was originally formed as veteran players from the CIS region. And they were a team that didn't have a lot of direction. There were a bunch of players who played a long time in CSGO and 1.6 and who wanted to continue on as pros. And they tried to win off the level of their individual play. And they had some basic leadership and they had some decent enough players, but they didn't have any superstar players and they didn't have a team approach that was going to take them to the top of Counter-Strike. So they existed in kind of this no man's land of being a decent to good team, and they could get upsets on people and they could maybe make it in the majors, but no one expected them to go far. And the key element that changed for this team was the acquisition of Zeus, because Zeus is perhaps the best in-game leader the CIS region has ever seen. And he found himself in a situation with Na'Vi where he was ousted. They no longer needed his services. He hadn't been the in-game leader in that team for a while. Starix had been taking on that role for the better part of a year. And so he comes along to Gambit, and this is a team where, kind of like Carrigan going over to FaZe, they just turn the team over to him and they say, right, this is your team, it's your vision, create something from this group of players. And what he was able to reformulate within the Gambit team is he was able to make a team that has a tactical basis to it. And yes, it is still that classic Zeus style, that very slow grinding style where you have a few executes and you run the clock down and then you make that set execute, and that's how you're going to win the round. And the idea is it's a numbers game. You're going to run these effective tactics, make small reads as to what you change up, and you're going to get whatever you need. You need 8 terrorist rounds, right? Well, we're going to run these few tactics and make sure we have 10 chances, and we're going to get our 7 or 8 out of those 10 and ensure that we hit our number. And it's really a probability approach to Counter-Strike in some way. It's not as precision as some of the teams like an Astralis might be, because he doesn't necessarily have the players to do that, to make the execute perfect. It's not as much off individual players like a FaZe or an SK, where those star players can win you the round by themselves. For Gambit, it has to be a team approach, and that stems from Zeus's approach to the game. So this is a team where you saw that really flourish and them kind of blossom as a team on a couple of maps initially. They became among the best teams in the world on Cobblestone and Overpass. And on these 2 maps, they could go head-to-head with anyone in the world and they had chances to win the game. They could play out an effective match against anyone, and Zeus could call a fantastic game against any level of opponent. The problem they had was there wasn't that extra map. So once you got them into series play, once they made the playoffs and they were playing best-of-3 series, they didn't have the map pool to be able to win those series. They could put up a map, they could have a chance, but they weren't going to go deep. They weren't going to win a major. Now, what's changed about them as a team is, yes, they're still good on those maps, but they've added in a little bit extra. They've got trains in the mix now. Now they've started to steal wins on other maps. They've actually started to be a team who's expanded the specialization to being a solid team across the board. The star player of Gambit is Adren, the Kazakhstani player who is a veteran from 1.6. And the interesting thing about his quest as a player is he was one of the best players in 1.6. He came from a country that didn't have any top teams for a long time, and he had to play within CIS teams towards the end. So it was difficult for him to really be a guy who could have won a major or won huge tournaments, but his individual skill level was very high. But interestingly enough, he was kind of in the vein of a Simple. He was a very young player who had all the skills and who could do whatever he wanted and have a big individual impact on the game. Now in CSGO, in the early days of CSGO, he was actually playing more as a supportive element, more as an anchor player, more as someone where other players are the superstars and he's just a veteran player within the team. Now what's different is he's taken what he established there in the early parts of CSGO and he's made that into a superstar role in itself, because his high level of consistency from playing this stable approach has made him someone who can have a massive impact for any team, and particularly for Gambit. He wins clutch rounds all the time. He's a player who's got a very consistent style of play. He's very intelligent in the game, reading what he needs to do, what he can do next. That's why he's so good in those high-pressure situations. And this ability to play at a very high level from what otherwise would be more of a middle ground player, a middle-of-the-pack player in your team, is what's allowed him and Gambit to be a team that's had an evolution, a progression in where they are as a team. And if they're going to have any chance to go deep and to get legend status again, it's going to come from Adren and that high level of consistency that he brings to the game. The really surprising player in the era of Gambit has been the newest addition, which is Hobbit. And this is another player from Kazakhstan, but he's one where he didn't really have a history like the other names in this team do. He wasn't someone who'd played a massive amount of 1.6. He wasn't someone who'd been a star in CSGO. It wasn't until he was in Gambit that the world actually really knew who he was as a player and saw what he was capable of. And the key aspect that he's had as a player is, despite being a rookie, despite being one of the more new players in the team, he's been able to be one of the stars of Gambit, be one of the better players, be one of the players who puts up the highest numbers and who has a big impact within Zeus's system. And so I feel like that also shows that not only does he have an internal confidence of what he's supposed to do in the team, but the team has actually embraced him as a young player. They haven't said, we've got veterans like Dosia, like Adren, who've been some of the best players in the world. They're going to be the stars. You play an off role over here. They've given him a chance to succeed, and he's absolutely grabbed that chance. And yes, he's not going to be the best player in the world, but within Gambit, he can be a player who has a high impact and who gives them more firepower to go head-to-head with those other top teams, so they're not just battling from experience, from tactics, and from the team-based system. They've got fraggers as well. The in-game leader of Gambit, Zeus, is not only one of the most decorated players in the history of the CIS region, but he's also someone who has something left to prove. Even though he's already won championships, he's already been to the final of majors with Na'Vi in CSGO, he's a player where, because of the way he was removed from Na'Vi and the fact that they kind of lost faith in him as a player and they thought, hey, maybe it's time for him to retire, it's no longer time for him to be one of the faces of Na'Vi, he's a player who isn't just competing to go far with Gambit now. He's trying to prove to the world that he's better than the player that was removed from Na'Vi, who was dipping and was slumping in his form. He wants to show that his style of play still works, that there's a reason why he developed that style and it had so much success and has had so much consistency over the years. And with this totally new group of players, what he's already accomplished has earned him many plaudits around the CSGO world. But if he can take this team deep at a major and he can win a big series and he can go head to head with the titans, the monsters that exist at the top end of the scene, that'll be something more than just impressive. It'll be something legendary at that point in time. And so for a player who's played as long as Zeus has, at this point in your career, it's about two things. It's about winning the biggest titles and it's about legacy. And the major offers him the opportunity with Gambit to do both of those things.